Hi all, thank you for joining. Today we're talking about what a CMO has learned when implementing Marketo recently. And we're thrilled to be joined with Jess Sprinkle from Sponge and Kevin Alansky from Higher Logic. Kevin, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I've been, I guess, doing this long enough that I could say I have 20 plus years, and I think I've got to update this slide. I think it's creeping over 25 years, so I've been doing this for a while. And it's good to be here. I've worked very closely with you, Shelby, over the years at Blackboard and at Logi Analytics. And Jess, I've gotten to know you over the years. You work great work at Logi, so it's great to be here.
Great. And Jess, any thoughts on why you started Sponge and what you learned kind of in-house implementing Marketo?
Yeah, I mean, when I was in marketing ops, I had kind of fallen into it from a general marketing role, and it just became clear to me that marketing ops was kind of different from the rest of the marketing team, and that they were very technical, very systems, very automation oriented, and very kind of perpendicular to what a lot of other marketers were focused on around the messaging and the brand and look and feel. Like that was less of a passion that I had. And I saw just kind of firsthand at Logi what a strong marketing ops foundation could do to the rest of the marketing operation in terms of making the campaigns and the messaging and the look and feel a lot more effective and have a larger reach. And so when I started Sponge, I left to go help other people do that because I was seeing a lot of great companies with really talented marketers that either just didn't have the bandwidth or didn't have the expertise to focus on marketing ops as a discipline, and were kind of housing it under email marketing and just didn't have enough attention to setting up the infrastructure and making sure that they were using all of the tools they had spent tons of money on effectively. So that's what we like to do at Sponge, is just help people use technology more efficiently to have marketing have a bigger contribution to revenue.
That's great. And so today we're going to talk about sort of the details of the implementation of Marketo. That includes timing it properly and making sure you're buying the software for the right reasons. Because we do see, actually, Jess, if you could jump ahead, is people are buying a lot of martech and they're swapping it in and out constantly. We were shocked when we saw this, especially because marketing automation is the highest being swapped yearly. So we want to make sure people are buying things for the right reasons and then getting the most value out of that. And that has a ton to do with people. It has to do with change management. It has to do with the project management of getting the implementation done. It's a gritty project. And so we think there's a lot more value people could get out of the tools before they rip and replace. Okay, great. So like I mentioned, how do you know it's time to pick a platform? How do you pick the right platform for your company and not get seduced by a great demo? And then we're going to include a ton of information about what implementations actually look like, the steps involved, and include some Excel templates to help. And then talk about how you actually manage the change on your team, on sales.
Great. So in terms of when it's time to either implement marketing automation for the first time or migrate to a different platform, one of the questions that we always encourage both CMOs and then marketing ops people who are usually leading the charge is to just think about what is the ROI that you're going to get from a new platform, because there are a lot of costs to either acquire or migrate a new solution. One, you might have overlapping fees, like if you're coming off of PITA and your renewal doesn't come up until June, but you're looking to get onto Marketo in March, you'll have a few months of overlapping fees. You may need to either staff up or hire out, depending on what your team looks like and what experience they have, and also just what their bandwidth might be over the next few months as you're implementing a new system. And then just thinking about the fact that it is a significant amount of work. So if you are doing it internally, you just need to be cognizant of the fact that they're going to have less time to actually run the demand gen campaigns while you're actually transitioning to a new system. But Kevin, I'm curious from your perspective at Higher Logic, what was kind of the driver in terms of why you guys decided that you needed to move to something like Marketo?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it was very clear. I don't know if it's in poor taste to mention what we were moving from, but the other platform was not as strong as in the reporting area. So I would go to our marketing operations person at the time, and I would ask for what I thought and previously experienced as a relatively simple report, maybe some customization that would take normally 15, 20 minutes, and it would take 8 hours. And it was very difficult to extract information out. And it just realized that we didn't have the right platform in place. And having previously used Marketo, I knew about the past experiences, the dashboards, other reporting, and knew that if you need to really act in more of a real-time fashion, you've got to be able to ask for those reports and get them back relatively quickly.
Yep. Cool. And when you guys were thinking about a new platform or budget, or how you thought about just how the team was going to be kind of handling that and their like day-to-day tasks, what were some of the factors that you thought about just to make that easier?
Yeah, I think one thing, just to layer on, kudos to the marketing operations team. I don't think I've ever experienced where we were redoing a brand new website and launching a new marketing automation
Yes.
platform to literally go live in almost the same day. So it was maybe a little crazy and a little unorthodox, but what we needed to do was build a better backbone with all that system. But my biggest concern was you've got a lot of migration of workflows and systems and processes that all have to change. And the difficulty is you need extra help and set of hands in order to kind of keep that on task and, obviously set yourself up for a better future. So it's very difficult to go it alone. And we essentially needed a partner like Sponge, to help get us through it.
Yeah. And so we kind of came in after you guys had decided that you were going to use Marketo. And so what we did let me go here. You had already decided on Marketo, and just based on your experience, I don't think the team had any experience with Marketo previously. Was that correct?
No, they did not. I think there was Pardot. I think both actually marketing operations folks had used Pardot at different places.
Okay, cool. And so when you were thinking about the next 3 years of Marketo, like what were some of the things that you wanted to both migrate on day one, but then also be able to kind of up level the marketing operation?
Yeah, I think, quite frankly, we're not using marketing nurture in any form previous to Marketo. So I knew that the hurdle might be pretty high, given that there was very little experience with the current team using the other platform. So I knew day one that we were going to get a better set of reporting, metrics and dashboards that were better linked to Salesforce. Workflows were a little bit easier to go with. So I knew those things could happen right out of the box. But long term, the horsepower that's going to come in is a lot of the nurturing, a lot of the dispositions, and a lot of other things that we're going to see and take advantage of that we hadn't previously. So phase one is just getting it out there, getting a better system, getting all the data just a lot tighter. Phase two is just really to take advantage of other tools that are normal in what you consider marketing automation. And then I know in phase three might be integration of other tools, whether it be ABM platforms or better use of leveraging AI and other things that might come from the data set that we're pulling from Marketo.
Yeah. I mean, we always try and tell people that it's like the crawl, walk, run philosophy. We'll spend a second on that later. But in terms of what you think you might need over the next 3 years, like there's kind of a handful of things that I think you can generally think about, which is just the integrations. Like I can't tell you the number of times that like someone will have just bought something because the VP of marketing or the CMO likes it, or the CEO likes it, even worse. And then you get it and it doesn't integrate with like the core like webinar platform or the core reporting platform. And so just taking a beat and just making sure that we understand what tools we needed to integrate with, what reports we actually want to get out of it. And also like trying to create those reports during the evaluation phase, as opposed to just seeing the demo and assuming that it's all going to work. In terms of workflows, what automation is important to you? Do you need to get more sophisticated? Some people don't. And so you don't need a lot of personalization or automation or operational campaigns. But if you do see yourself moving in that direction, or if you see yourself needing like product specific life cycles, or, you know, a lot of geographic or translation issues, like you need to kind of think about what platform is going to set you up best for that. Staffing is a concern, either because you don't have someone internally, or you think that it's going to be a big hurdle to just get over the learning curve. But just looking at the platforms that are available and what are kind of easy skills to hire for, like Marketo, Pardot, HubSpot, those are all fairly common. So it's likely that, you know, if you have turnover, you can find other people that can manage those systems. And then training, both kind of your initial training and then ongoing, do those people have access to the kind of help that they need? One thing we like to recommend is to just give the marketing team, specifically like the actual users of the platform, more kind of authority and ownership over the decision to have the platform and which vendor that they're going to choose. Sometimes, especially like with Salesforce, the fact that they own Pardot, it can get wrapped up into sales deals with the VP of sales getting, you know, doing their Salesforce renewal. But the marketing team really needs to play an active role in both establishing their user requirements so that you can make sure that you're fighting facts with facts in terms of whether a technical requirement is met with certain vendors, and the fact that they are choosing a platform that's really going to work with them long term. So trying not to just go along with the whims of, you know, the CEO, CSO, CMO, just their opinion, or just kind of making a gut reaction or a quick reaction based on like the board telling them they need to get something, or being wooed by an aggressive sales rep. And wherever possible, having one person to own the vetting and evaluation of the platform is pretty key. In terms of ballpark costs, I mean, they're all over the map, and all of the main platforms do have modules and stuff where it can get pricey real quick. But Marketo generally starts at about $20K for an email database of about 10,000 contacts. HubSpot a little bit less, but they're generally focusing on smaller companies. And then implementations, we get asked a lot, like how long does it really take to implement or migrate? It really depends. If you're starting from scratch and you don't really have anything, it can be quick. But assuming that you are taking stuff from an old platform and moving to a new platform, depending on your history and legacy data and what you're bringing over, and also what changes you're making to the existing logic, it's usually a 2 to 3 month project to turn the lights on, and then you can become more sophisticated after that. So when we do migration projects, we actually structure them as a series of workshops. And we try and get sales and marketing to actually get in a room and talk about issues that are a little bit adjacent to the marketing automation platform. Because it's just a reality that the sales and marketing teams are generally more siloed than you think of yourselves, and that you're a lot less organized. So like when we start asking probing questions of, okay, so like what are the funnel stages and what are the SLAs? It's like, oh yeah, we have all of that. But then when you actually are forced to produce a piece of documentation that has it spelled out that everyone agrees to, or a report that everybody is looking at, it's like, oh, well, okay, no, she's looking at this, but I'm looking at this, and it's not quite locked. And generally we find that when the marketing team is planning, their plans are very campaign specific. When the sales team is planning, they're very pipeline specific, and it's not necessarily a lot of overlap in terms of how that affects the technology that you guys are using. But Kevin, curious to see, we did a similar sort of workshop process with you guys. Like, how did you think this went in terms of trying to get the sales and marketing alignment?
Yeah, certainly you can never underestimate until you bring everybody together what their perspectives are. And, thankfully, we have a great culture inside our organization, so we can have healthy debate, but not, be so emotional. So I think people were presenting their lens or their perspectives on things. And, we have a lot of both really smart people inside on both sides of the equation, sales and marketing, and yet just the perspective of which they deal with day to day, and what they need in terms of reporting and capabilities, and um, other facets of it. It's amazing that until you do those workshops, things don't really come out in the day to day, just because we're not in the weeds in their work and they're not in the weeds in our work. So you have to present. Marketing was taking a leadership role by presenting all the information and working with you guys, of course. But at the end of the day, people have got to voice their lens and whatnot. But you're always more siloed than you think is very true.
Yeah. And I think it is good to have the marketing team, I mean, especially when it's related to like a Marketo implementation, to take the lead in terms of what you think is the right answer, in terms of what is the best practice that you're presenting back to the organization. Because I think it's just easier for someone to react to something than to come up with a brand new answer. But when, for instance, like I know we changed some of the funnel stages, and we changed how lead scoring worked, like just things kind of related as part of the Marketo project. And it was helpful to just interview the salespeople, and then to also get them in a group, because as soon as somebody said something like, oh, but actually this doesn't really make sense for this sort of segment, then it was like a pile-on effect, and you got people to be a little bit more vocal about what works and what doesn't work. One of the things, okay, yeah, here we go. One of the things that we definitely recommend early on in the process is to define user stories. So both starting your interviews amongst the marketing team, but then also the sales team, is to define, what do you actually want to do with it, or what are some of the problems that we see today with our current tool set. And so we need to just actually sit down as a diverse team and just figure out, what do we actually want to accomplish. And so that's going to be pain points, it's going to be goals, it's going to be sometimes conflicting things that the different users might actually want to see, but we want to understand, those pros and cons, so that we can make any compromises. The most easy failure is if you don't have an idea of what you want to do, and then you get on a demo, and of course it's beautiful and glowing, and then you're like, yeah, I want that. And then you haven't actually done the work to figure out, okay, no, actually, can this handle my most complicated campaign? Can this handle the reporting that I actually want to do? So having a very specific set of user stories before you actually do your demos is best practice. And so that can range from anything from like security to like how you want to set up your email nurture programs, to specific reports. To the extent that you can bring actual reports and show exactly why they're wrong or what you want to see instead to those demos, you will get a better output from the vendor team to accomplish those goals. We do have a resource here of a bunch of user stories related to marketing automation, so we'll include those in the slides, so you can download it. But basically, you want to be a pain in the ass during demos. You want to force the salesperson to go off script immediately, and then show you exactly how they're going to fulfill each user story. If you can, get access to a sandbox or a free trial, and you want to figure out what is your toughest campaign, what is your toughest integration, what's your toughest report that you cannot do today, and see if you can do it in the new platform. And until they can prove to you that you can do it, you keep pushing. Because like we said before, the demos are all going to be great. Like for instance, we just had a client, we came in a little bit late in the game, but they had already chosen HubSpot. They were on Marketo, they chose HubSpot because they were like, well, the reporting just looks great and it's out of the box and this is exactly what I want. And then once they got in there, they realized, oh, actually to get that, we needed like a specific data architecture to like get the data into a position where we could have gotten that. And it actually wasn't super out of the box. It was like kind of a pain to get at what they wanted. And there were a few kind of idiosyncrasies that it wasn't quite what they were looking for in terms of a funnel performance view. So being very specific and pushing on the details to see how are they going to handle certain situations is the best. Lesson number 2, IT is your friend. They can help you with the procurement process. You need to make sure that all of the security protocols and system requirements are in place. And they can also help on the project management side. In fact, HireLogic had an amazing project management resource on the IT team that really helped keep things organized and on track. Kevin, curious to see, like, have you had that at other places, or how did you decide to partner up with the IT team?
Yeah, I mean, certainly not to this degree. As you mentioned, our IT staff has been just supportive across the entire board. It's good to have those partnerships. I think there was a lot of research over the last probably 5 to 10 years that marketing's technology budget is sometimes bigger than the IT budget. So it's still my best interest to work with them, as they have a lot of other concerns that I would not have thought about, whether it was security or SSO or other things that might come up, to keep us on track, especially around governance and privacy laws are creeping up. At least our IT staff is making sure that whether it's GDPR or CCPA or other things, that they're watching that for us, which is an incredible help. So to partner with them has been great. As you mentioned, they were also project managing it way better than any of us could have done on the marketing team. So from that perspective, it made a lot of sense, and we were happy to have them.
Yeah, it really helped. One thing to note is that a marketing automation platform isn't a miracle worker. Everyone is going to have its quirks, limitations, challenges with certain types of integrations, maybe bad customer support. I think the general takeaway here is knowing your user stories and your requirements is going to help you identify what limitations you can live with and what is a deal breaker. And then just to kind of underscore the point that nothing works out of the box, like some things are more out of the box than others. That's true. It may not be out of the box in the way that you want it to be, but it can get you there faster. But you still will need talented staff to implement and leverage it for any platform. There's just a lot of operational things going on behind the scenes that you need to set up and maintain yourself. So now we'll get into what an implementation actually looks like. They're big projects. You should treat it as you would like a user conference or product launch. There should be a project plan, milestones, dates, sprints, check-ins, owners. And this is a team project. Where we have seen implementations fail is giving the entire project to one person. Maybe that person isn't even like very high in the organization. They're like kind of the lowly MOPS person. And so they don't have a lot of authority to make good trade-off decisions, or even push people to get things done from a technical perspective. And so just kind of assuming that they're going to go away for 3 months and then come back with like, ta-da, here's our beautiful Marketo instance, without spending the time with them to make some of these key business decisions is just going to be a surefire way to failure. And this isn't a side hustle. It does need to be somebody's number one focus. And at Higher Logic, we did have a good team. It was a little bit stressful that you guys were working on a complete website redesign at the same time because everybody was being pulled in a couple of different directions. But still, there was a core team there that was pretty dedicated to getting this done. And in terms of learning moments, so there are definitely, as the best way to learn is just to do it for sure. And that's definitely true in marketing ops. However, if you don't have experience in marketing automation in general, the learning curve is going to be pretty steep. So just to make sure that they have the help that they need to be successful, you can help with training, getting them certified in the new platform. Especially right now, a lot of the vendors are offering free training due to the coronavirus. So you can get free training with Marketo. I think Salesforce, PITA, and HubSpot all right now. LeanMD is opening up their Marketo training for free. So you can get certified without paying, hundreds of dollars to get certified. And that will force you to get through some of the corner cases and make sure that you really understand how the platform works. And you need to be obsessed with process. You're detail oriented. You want to find the stuff that's going to slip through the cracks. You're genuinely passionate about automation. And they do need to have some level of technical knowledge. So if they don't know what SPF and DKIM are, that's a red flag. They do need to just be aware of some of the things that they'll need to tackle during the implementation. Okay, so I'm going to go through this in just high level detail. We'll share a document that goes through this in more detail and is a sample project plan that you can use if you are planning to migrate to Marketo. But generally, you're going to have a few different categories of projects and tasks. So the first is just kind of the general configuration, and that's anything from provisioning users, adding the tracking code to your website, setting up the subdomain, setting up all of your integrations, getting your email templates, your landing page templates. If you're using HubSpot, integrating the blog, just that kind of stuff, just the basics of all of the guts. You're kind of connecting everything. Then you'll have some Salesforce work or whatever your CRM is, but assuming you're using Salesforce, you'll have some work to do there in terms of integrating it, making sure that you're pulling and pushing the right fields, you're connected to the same objects, you are aligned on who is assigning, which system is assigning leads, whether that's in Salesforce or Marketo or both. And then, of course, migrating all of the data from Salesforce into the new system. And so you'll just want to make sure that you have clean data in Salesforce so that when you pull it over into Marketo, it's not just moving trash into another trash dump. And then the last section is just around actually migrating all of the assets. So you're importing all of the leads and contacts into your system. You're doing all of your images, your assets, your email and landing page templates. You're setting up new forms. You're setting up lead scoring programs. You're setting up some operational campaigns. So if you want to standardize what state is or country is, any of those operational campaigns that you need to make sure data is flowing from one system to another and things are clean. And then, of course, testing to make sure that as you're filling out all of your forms, things are getting into the marketing automation platform, getting over to the CRM, and prompting the salesperson to take action as needed. So like I said, we will share this full project plan in Excel. It goes through excruciating detail of what you would need to do from step 1 to step 400. Hopefully this will help you if this is your first integration or your first implementation. You can go step by step. Okay, and then the last lesson that Kevin, I think that you wanted to chat about was to not overbake the cake, how to be a good partner with the migration, and how to do a little crawl, walk, run instead of trying to like boil the ocean and get it all done right away. So curious what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're migrating off one platform to another, eventually you got to get off the old platform. So for us, we did need an end of life and needed a date to work toward. So it was a little bit easier in our regard. So we had to not boil the ocean and just go with more of a simplified list so that we can get off one platform and get onto another. So that was one big part of the motivation, right? So it's always good to think of the big picture and see it and understand it, but know that if you're going to wait until all of those things are set up and whatnot before you launch, it could be 6 months, 9 months, 12 months before you get things going. And the reality is you do have to start to see and understand what things are working, what things are not working. There's always, as much as you plan and everything, there will be surprises. There will be things that break. There will be things that will be gotchas that you just didn't see. So I always argue I believe in the crawl, walk, run model as well. So as long as you spec that out and really make sure that you can have enough to do your business and maintain your business within phase one, but then go to those more advanced techniques in phase two and phase three is all the better, because you're going to have to need a month or two to work out all of the little gotchas that are going to come up after you launch. So that's why I also believe in starting very quickly, as much as you can, to make sure that you get out there and figure it out.
Yeah. We generally recommend, if you're going to be changing things from the old platform to the new platform, that you start with the email and landing page templates, because somebody's going to sit there and create 75 landing pages and 75 emails. So if you're going to change the template, you might as well do it now so that all of them are using the new template. And then to focus on like more of the operational things. So lead scoring. Do we need to change our model? If yes, let's do it now so that it's kind of clean in the new system. And then for things like funnel stages or SLAs or automation, like focusing on those, and less like, hey, we're going to start this whole new nurture campaign cycle and, it's going to work totally like this. And we're going to get Terminus and we're going to do all of this ABM stuff. Like, no. Like leave kind of the new campaign strategies until later and just kind of get the existing stuff rebuilt in a better way. And then we can focus on new campaigns. So in terms of managing change, I mean, you have a good sized team, some of them more technical than others. And then on the Salesforce side, there's a good number of folks that are working directly on Salesforce and sales ops. So curious how you, as the CMO, were managing change within the organization.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways it's to make sure that I can get executive level sign off and buy-in, which is so key when doing these things. The CFO, CEO are like, why do we need to change? Even if there's best interest and it's maybe sometimes not as detailed or understood by the CFO and CEO, there's always hesitancy, because why wouldn't we focus more energy around trying to create demand rather than create, better plumbing? So a lot of times it's the kind of the unsexy side of things that have to get done in order to, get more, to get stronger in terms of reporting or make your marketing more efficient, or creating better opportunities or the linkage between sales and marketing. So especially coming in, to have that evaluation and executive level support is critical. And then I think for me, then once you get the framework and, you know, essentially the buy-in. My job a little bit becomes more traffic cop. And then when things become more escalated, I've got to be able to solve the problems. But, you know, I have a great marketing operations and sales operations team who are working well together. And as long as that, you know, alignment is happening, they're agreeing, you know, they could have a healthy debate, but essentially they come to conclusions. That's my job is then to stay out of the way, right? And just make sure that I can unlock budget if I need to, or, you know, settle a debate, you know. So in this particular case, things were moving relatively smoothly. And, you know, I didn't have to intervene as much or make, you know, hard decisions.
Yeah, and one of the things that I liked that we did at Higher Logic was we had these steering committee meetings where every other week we presented to the executive team what the progress had been. So it wasn't, okay, spend $100,000 on Marketo, and then 3 months later we're going to let you know, is it on or not? It's every other week, like, here's what's been done, here's what's next, here's what's been done, here's what's next, we're still on track to hit this date. And showing kind of that consistent progress that I think sometimes that is taken for granted because the executive team doesn't necessarily know all the stuff that is required for the plumbing. So I think that was a really nice way of just keeping everybody on the same page and aware of what's going on. Whoops, here we go. And in terms of just especially since you did have a team that hadn't had experience with Marketo, you guys were already stressed with the website relaunch, throw in a global pandemic on top of it. It was, you know, a lot of effort. And there were some decisions that needed to be hashed out, and sometimes like just having multiple meetings, multiple conversations to make sure that we're just on the same page. And that when change was required on either side, that it was clear why it needed to happen, and what the impact of those changes were going to be. Especially on the Salesforce side, like I think that comes up a lot is when marketing decides, hey, we want to change, you know, X, Y, or Z, like that has an impact on what has been already built in Salesforce, and you usually don't own Salesforce. So you need to make sure that the sales ops team is on the same page, and if there's going to be a change that they can handle it and be able to support it and defend it to the sales team, because they're going to be the one that's fielding those questions. And in terms of training, so we have been doing training throughout, which I definitely recommend. But I think you ultimately end up doing a lot of training towards the end as things are coming online, and we're kind of handing the baton off to you to be able to run your own campaigns. We've tried to do that not at the end of the quarter, so towards the middle of the quarter, and trying to build in some time for office hours and support, because inevitably as people start to create their own campaigns and really do it for themselves, think little questions are going to come up, like, what is this and/or, like, what is the smart list again? What's the difference between this and the flow? When should I use a list? When should I use a smart list? Like those just little minutia of questions are going to come up. So making sure that you have time set aside for handling all of that. And then of course, in all things, assuming the lowest common denominator, whether that's, you know, help text within your Salesforce instance, so that the sales team understands, like, what's this last interesting moment thing, or when you're doing training for the sales team, having as few slides as possible and then repeating that and trying to back that up and repeat what's going on, so that they can kind of get it inculcated into their brain, so that they don't come back a month later being like, well, I don't understand how the lead scoring works. Just making that stuff simple, repeatable, and easily accessible, so that people can have access to that information. Kevin, anything to add there?
No, I mean, it's just, I think you hit the nail on the head, but, you know, I think when I've done this both here and everywhere else, there is a lot of process change, and it's exhausting. And if you're the one driving the new technology, then mentally you're on board with the change. If you're pushing another partner inside, you know, someone inside your organization, a coworker, it is a little bit, sometimes it comes across as being out of left field, and they don't understand, why do we need to change? Everything's working just fine, you know? So it's, you know, it can be hard and it can be emotional because it's exhausting to change and change again. But obviously, if you believe in the system and believe you're going to get better output, and as long as they can understand the value, um, then, you know, it makes, you know, you just have to do a lot of internal selling and explain the value of what you're getting.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially with sales ops and the sales leaders, this is like 100% why we need to involve them early on in the process, so that you're on the same page in terms of what the actual current challenges are, because they may be completely unaware that like you are unable to get coherent marketing reporting out of Salesforce. And so digging into why that is the case and why we need to make some changes to get to that outcome, I think makes people a little bit more empathetic and willing to come up with a solution. Lesson number 5, one and done is not a strategy. So we got into this a little bit already, but communicate over and over and over and over and over. This is true when you're talking to the sales team. Like for instance, what is Marketo Sales Insight? Like, what are these last interesting moments? How does lead scoring work? If you guys have this documented, that will make it easier to communicate over and over again. We always like to recommend when we're doing both marketing and sales training is to, you know, have a short deck, but then repeat it a couple of times and do literally the same presentation over and over. Maybe you can layer in on like some new progress or things that are coming up next. But communicating frequently and often and making sure that you'll always have access to that documentation that you can send to them and just stay at it because while you have been staying up late and working at Marketo, getting the 75 landing pages created, they have been going about their jobs, doing everything normally. So they are just not as aware of some of the details. And that can be hard for MOPs because they're generally the back office people. So they're generally not the people in front of the sales team telling them about the new campaigns we're launching. So for any MOPs folks that are leading this kind of implementation at your company, I would just schedule it. I mean, literally just put in your calendar, like send this out to the sales team or send a little Slack message that says, hey, FYI, lead scoring is live. If you don't remember what's happening with lead scoring, here it is. You could even do it every time you send a report for like, hey, we achieved 95% of our leads target this week. We're really seeing, you know, good results from XYZ campaign. If you don't remember what that campaign is, here it is. Just again, communicate, and figure out what touch points you can have and then schedule it so you don't forget. All right, thank you. That's all the content we wanted to tackle today. We will share the project plan so that if you are evaluating Marketo, HubSpot, Pardot, any of the marketing automation platforms and you need to figure out where to get started, we'll also share the user stories for you to figure out, you know, what is important to you and how should you think about the things you're trying to achieve within a marketing automation platform to make sure that you are being a pain in the ass during demos and getting the tool you actually want. And we will share these slides, of course. But Kevin, thank you so much for coming on and participating.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Thanks all.